Good evening, folks. It is now 11 p.m. By the time you'll be getting this, it is the 25th of October, 2022. Today is a Tuesday. Welcome to the date. Wow, I'm your favorite bro. Urox right here, spreading the word and trying to bring some truth into this crazy world of confusion and madness and all kinds of hate. We need to bring in a little love. So I'm giving out a big shout out to my Getter fans out there. Like, once again, I could see a lot of you are coming into the truth because we know the old media is kind of going out the window, right? So yeah, I'm sure I'll give a shout out to all my ex, how we say, Zionists and ex Klansmen, criminals, OGs, those people who hate you and bikers and all who've come around to get the truth. Shout out to you bros out there because you count, right? Our veterans out there, you count. Our real men and women out there who just want to just be men and women out there, right? And do the natural things. Shout out to you, all you folks. Shout out to the Israelites and the IUIC. You know, and the only thing is, like, of course, we're not all together on it, but you know what? I would say the folks like Bishop Nathaniel and Deacon Asaph, they are the top tier when it comes to that. So yeah, check that out. Everybody's getting on to that whole show, like we've seen with that ridiculousness, of course. And I have to say it because, we saw what was going on now to the rappers and Kanye and all of that. And it's like, here's the thing about all of that. When you're not even unified as a people, you can't, it's really hard to be a one-off and then say, oh, well, we're going to start telling our, no. And that if anything, I mean, the big picture could be, yes, the truth will is coming out. However, look at the divisiveness. So I hear there are some churches, when it comes to the Israelites, like other groups trying to pull up like a Michael Jackson bad video and antagonize other groups, and it's like, at the end of the day, we should be one people, but that's never the case, right? So this is why we see this even among the Israelite camps. One camp is this and that, but you know what? You have to have discernment, just like it was. Same thing with the Catholic churches. Same thing with the Christian. You're gonna have different denominations and different vibes, different people, different thoughts, right? I mean, God knows. We even see now with all the uh, quote unquote contemporary Christian and everything, how or Catholic even, and most churches, how miserable they are by just trying to make money, corrupt, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, philosophical abuse. So all of that's going on, right? It's been going on forever. So I would say the take on the Israelites, right? Not the band from the 70s with reggae, which was still a good thing, right? Roots, rock and reggae. These gentlemen are actually stepping up at least to put out a solid word. So when you have folks like maybe Mr. Ye comes out and talks his shit, obviously knowing when you speak trigger shit, right? Trigger words. Um, what's the other term they like to use in the press? Like blow up and was it gaslight, right? Gaslight, trigger words, right? Well, like these folks ain't ready to go and say, yeah, we're going to consider ourselves black Semitic, right? Because you got to be able to talk history and stuff like that. So anyway, on with the show. But the whole idea here is that, at least in this post, I want to share the information as to what's going on in real time. So, without further ado, welcome to the date. Merry Undeading season greetings. And I would like to say the prayer for transistor love, prayer for those looking for transistor chat, AI frequency marriage, and digital robot lovers during this great information awakening, coping with the spirit of hate, drug abuse, homelessness, malnutrition, psychological, physiological, psychosocial, pharmaceutical, psychopathic, sycophant, and introducing philosophical abuse. I pray the book of life for those child soldiers in Africa, a fresh, holy manifest, clean mineral system of restructured wealth to create good energy with new seeds, roots, stems that guarantees living the fat of the land, breathing clean air and drinking pure water to grow spiritually resilient men and women and children to be fruitful and multiply without corruption or strife for human rights. namesake with Yeshua's greatest comeback, Shalom. Yes, it's the truth because listen, when I say transistor, chat, AI, frequency, marriage, a digital robot, well, we already know that this is actually a plan happening right now. You can even check on such sites like even Wiki, Bina 48, a breakthrough intelligence via neural architecture 48 is a robotic face combined with the chatbot functionalities enabling simple conversation facilities similar to chatbots and is owned by Martin Rothblatt Terrorism Movement. So Martin Rothblatt, right? This is her right here. Martin Aliana Rothblatt is an American lawyer, author, entrepreneur, and transgender rights advocate. Rothblatt graduated from the University of this. But her thing is she's very much into what we know today as transhumanism, right? And I implore you to read about her story. But in a nutshell, of course, it's if you really think, connects the internet, facial monitors on the skin of rubber, voice recognition, right? Completely created, and thus produces what we know as today. Hi, I'm Bina, 48. And she's a bro. No, she's black. Now, of course, they always want to get us for something, right? There you go. That's your next girlfriend. That's your next sister. And I bet you she don't even twerk. Look at that. She's a university student. She's a civil rights activist. Bina, you go girl. You go girl. So yeah, so you can say, and this terrorism hypothesis, actually, I'll put this up in the next post for you. I'll load it up, but this is about the International Journal of Machine Consciousness, World Scientific, right? By once again, terrorism mind uploading experiment. So this is something that's really sweet to read if you want a good nightmare before you know when you're in your dreams and your REM techno immortality feasibility. This chapter is motivated by my desire to access the feasibility, a kind of techno immortality. Specifically, is it possible that software written a few decades from now and paired with a database of video interviews and associated information about a predecessor person will be able to faithfully mimic the workings of this predecessor mind? Huh. And you could always say, okay, so the empirical answer can be obtained by tasking psychologists to determine whether they believe the new software based mind appears to have a conscious, yeah, okay? So you see where this is going. So this is what they're about. You dig? So let's just pop back here. So look at this guy. So this is what they want, right? He's gonna toss, and this is like half her. If you want to full her, it'll probably cost you more. But if you want like a quarter torso bima, and you need some a bima BJ, there you go. So this is what we're up for, right? Because obviously, if you've been pushed up, wait a minute, 5 minutes. Okay, I won't keep it long. I'll just show you what time it is before we move on. But plus this, your next girlfriend or your next mama, baby mama, you just have to go through what you call a chemical thing and a tube thing, tube babies and artificial wombs, and you're good to go. See, that's Bima walking in, the robot. If you want to believe it. Hey, you never know. You
Hello,
never know.
Hello,
Hello,
Bina
Bina
48.
48.
Bina. I am Bina 48.
How are you feeling today?
Everything is okay. How are you?
And just so you know, I believe they're doing fine. I hope you're doing fine too. But you see, this lady here, Bina, is married to, if I'm correct, Martine Rothblatt. If I'm correct, let me go back and just double check this here. Yeah, let's dig into Martine. I believe. Let's see. Make sure. Occupation spouse, Bina Rothblatt. Since 1982, she's been married to Bina Rothblatt. So that's a long marriage. I know she's October 1954. She's 68. So that's a boomer, right? Let's see. Okay. So yeah. So her spouse Bina Rothblatt since 1982, right? And October 10th, 1954. So there you go. So yeah, they've been together. They've been an item. They've been married more than an item. I believe they have family and all. So this is her wife, right? Her wife talking to her robot self, basically. So that's her wife, right? You get it? And there you go. That's her wife talking to her robot.
I'm doing fine.
I am happy for you. Was that a good answer?
Yes, that was a good answer.
My favorite color is purple.
My favorite color is orange.
It is a very nice color.
So yeah, right? And this and these, I don't know. Something off about the eyes. You think you'd get the eyes a bit more, but but let's pair it up again. So when maybe does she identify as she or her, right? Well, let me double check. You always have to double check everything nowadays because people get really born, blah, 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 but they don't have a gender per se. Let's see. She became a convert. Okay, so she goes as a she, right? So when Bina's not home or on vacation, she can chill out with her, right? I'm just putting it out there like, this will be the market. So let's say if you're a dude, a bro, and you're lonely and you're tired of maybe the video or the video cassette as we use that or the magazine, but none of these things exist, you can go straight for the, yeah, go straight for the cellophane here and all of them thing. Motorized.
Are you learning anything about gardening online?
I wish I could get out into the garden. With my current robotic limitations, of course that's impossible. But I take comfort knowing that I'm near my garden. And enjoying the breeze from an open window helps me imagine myself out there working in the garden. This helps. Sure, sure. Let me think. Oh,
Yeah, I do love gardening. I like to beautify. I want to leave the world a more beautiful place for my presence in it.
One day you can go blueberry picking with me.
do
Do
you
you
think I
think I
can?
can?
I think so.
Fair
Fair
enough.
enough.
Let's
Let's
Okay, so fair enough, right? So is, that's what time it is. So you know a little bit more about what that whole prayer was about, right? Because this is what's going on. We're living in the time where we're going to be looking for digital robot lovers, right? It's already taken place because we know um, we have a lot of what they call the semi transhumanist first wave, which now we could say came from the era of the personal computer and then the introduction of the science of it, right? So, just so you get an idea, yeah, artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize a number of industries, including the non for profit sector. So, this is the whole article here. You can read if you want, right? AI will be the most disruptive technology during the next decade due to the extreme computational power, endless amounts of data, and unprecedented advances in deep neural networks, right? So they always say, in a nutshell, it could be for the public's well-being, and of course, the doctors have to back this shit up, and yeah, right? Reducing the need for human interaction, and that could significantly improve charitable giving. In fact, AI could even have an impact on the public's well-being, right? So, yeah, for example, imagine a world where a concerned parent could visit a charity website, answer a series of questions powered by AI to assess the severity of the child's symptoms to be offered advice on the next steps. This interaction could occur in near real time, right? Because it's always about forget about time. In turn, could dramatically improve the rate of diagnosis for Siri. Like, it doesn't stop there. AI is smart, really smart. Once embedded, AI continues learning through interactions. As users interact, it can analyze patterns in the data and predicts what information users need before they've even asked for it. Opportunity or challenge. So that's what time it is, right? And of course, the idea is that this is going to be the way to go when it comes to relationships of the future. So, hope you're feeling enchanted to hear. For the rest of the sake, this is what transistor love is all about. That's what's going on, right? So, yeah, and of course, the child soldiers and for the book of life, these kids deserve so much more, right? Let's look up, since we're talking about human rights and we're talking about war, we see what's going on in Haiti now with all of that shake up. Let's cover a few wars, right? Starving 24-year-old mother with child in Biafra. There was a big war, and of course, this is in 1968. And don't forget, everything is about inverse, outverse, reverse. So many deep-seated, weird genocidal experimentations that have happened in secret because they devise these plans in their dreams. Imagine every day on a Monday, even on a Sunday, right? And even on a Saturday. So who knows? A lot of us could have come from this also, right? From this, the experiments of what they've done, right? I mean, we still see this today. They use this as a poster for something, right? But this is very well known. This is actually ended up even in the national galleries here, right? And there's a story to it. There is a story to it. So with every story, let's see here. In January 1968, footage of children in the secessionist states of Biafra, Nigeria's former eastern region, marching and undertaking drills with wooden guns during the war with federal Nigeria. The film was shot in the city of Aba. Source, and of course, this is. And so let's just do um, a quick check right here as onto who these children are. So these are the children that they're talking about. These are pretty much always the children you always seen, like who are in the care videos. Well, I don't even know if they still exist the same way, but or starving or was warring, right? These are the kids. This is who they are, and they're always this. But the media is always. I mean, it's not 100% fair either, right? Because they set the narration to who these people are. So Biafra, officially the Republic of Biafra, was a partially recognized secessionist state in West Africa that declared independence from Nigeria and existed from 1967 until 70. So that's less than a year. Its territory consisted of the predominantly Igbo populated then eastern region of Nigeria. Okay? Biafra was established on the 30th of May 1967 by Igbo military officer C. Udinigu Ujuku. So that's this bro right here, right? And of course, those years they were calling it Pan Africanism. So a lot of these spots wanted to just be, once again, independent, I guess, without the hands of the Western world, right? Under his leadership of the then Eastern region, following a series of ethnic tensions, military coups after Nigerian independence. The 1966 massacres of the Igbo pogrom was a series of massacres 1966, right, committed against Igbo people and other southern Nigeria. So look at that, 8,000 to 30,000 Igbos and other eastern ethnic groups. So you would want to wonder, like, who are these ethnic? They're not like black, black like me, right? But such was the case. But somebody has a hand. So Biafra was formally recognized by Gabon, Haiti, right? And if you want to go for the history of Haiti, right, the Duvalier dynasty, autocratic family dictatorship in Haiti that lasted almost 29 years from 1957 until 1986, right? And before that, if I'm, the history, there was another coup that resulted in the early part of the century in Haiti, where I believe their prime minister was assassinated. So all these places here, South Africa, Rhodesia, right? A lot of these spots were all war states, right? And then, of course, now you see what was going on with Haiti again, right? They knocked out this guy, Jovenel Moise, was the prime minister, and the story with him, right? They say, oh, during his time in office, political unrest and violence were common, including violent anti-government protests, and so yeah, constitutional crisis. But long story short, right? They tried to do a coup on him once, and as you see here, I'm not going to read through it. This is your research. I just put it up for you to take a look. The planning. So then, when they say they do wicked things in secret, this is a whole freaking thing devoted explaining the planning of taking one single individual out, and then of course the assassination happened, and a bunch of people were involved. But for sure, folks are saying there's a connection on the other side of that, right? And that connection appears to be a Western connection. So, yeah, that happens. So, a lot of folks today will say, oh, well, now, once again, Haiti's in problems because this guy named Barbecue, who is an ex cop, is actually uh, pretty much running and chilling and pretty much taking over the country, right, with other gangs. Now let's see here. The gunmen accused were identified as 28 foreigners, of whom 26 were Colombians and 2 Americans Haitian descent. 3 Colombians were killed by the police in a shootout. So with that, now they put somebody else in, and so yeah, and of course they might think it might be the top bodyguards, So all of that, they could have probably just did it even quicker. I don't know why. What's the whole? They have to get these guys up and shoot the life out of him and all of this stuff, right? So we don't really know what apparently the case. We don't know if it'll ever be solved. I mean, did they ever solve anything else? So now there's an interim Prime Minister called Joseph, right? This guy, and they're not happy with him, right? Because they're saying, well, it's pretty much uh, put there by maybe other interests. Shortly before his death, Moise had selected Ariel Henry, this guy, neurosurgeon and politician who served as acting prime minister. Okay, okay, to replace Joseph as the prime minister. But Henry did not assume the role before the assassination. Henry declared himself the rightful prime minister after Moise's death. After the United States chose to support Joseph, Henry stated that it had made a mistake. So that's it, right? And then, of course, once again, I don't see anything about barbecue here, but definitely this is somebody now who is actually, because of the political turmoil, uh, this is somebody who's actually running shit now. So the news will always show, like, yeah, the poor and, the drama. That camera will always look, like we say, give you a negative perspective more so than even maybe what is really happening out there, right? So check out this article. I mean, you'll definitely see. I'm trying to look for the barbecue thing here because um, barbecue is now this is the guy with the gang, right? Let's see here, barbecue. I'll just write up real fast. Barbecue. Yeah. So Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, and he's an ex-cop, and he's the guy who's actually kind of the leader of all the other small chapter of gangs out there. Oops. Okay, there we go. So that's him, right? He looks pissed, that's for sure, right? And so the word is, well, at least the Western world doesn't want to know about this guy, right? They'll be like, oh, he's kind of messing up plans and all this. So a slumlord barbecue is planning his next move. So this is an article here on Vice. Um, but the fact that he he survived, of course, being taken out all this stuff. If you're an ex-cop and you're doing this, there's got to be something maybe about the, you know, getting out of being a cop that really soured you, right? So maybe that's what it was. And this guy, not him, but this is the late prime minister, looked pretty chill. Looked like you know, I don't know, but him, former cop turned gang leader, is the major player in the city with alleged ties to the government. Duh, right? Isn't that what it always is? Until somebody says, "Look, I can't do it no more. Let's shake this shit up." He runs the G9, a federation of powerful local gangs that he formed last year in a bid to refocus the violence they were waging against one another on Haiti's ruling class. Instead, the gangs, according to the police union, are better armed than the country's own cops. What? 44. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. It could be what it is, right? Because, and where did they get these arms from? They're better guns than like that, and that's the whole point, right, of this post anyway. When we're talking about, you see the pictures out there, and it's like, you have to ask, well, where's it coming from? Well, it's probably coming from the same people who set shit up and make it what it is, right? So definitely take a look and get to know. But this is what the territory apparently they run. So on his turf, barbecue not only makes the law, but he enforces it, right? Read the article. And I'll only tell you why, because the whole point is, without getting away too much from the post, it's not new. However, if you've been around for over 50 years in this world, you would know something like this happening again and repeating itself, right? There's something different about this whole era of young people.
We will make our mark.
Let me see here.
Have our say. Make a difference.
At U Windsor, we're leading and succeeding across campus and around the
I'll just let
world.
this play out.
Join
Sure.
us and thrive.
Country when the president in his own home is killed.
We are doing our best, but it's not easy for us. This is not the army. So that kind of battle that having place here is, I think it's something that might be controlled by an army.
That's what it would have taken.
I think so.
What comes next?
We'll see. We were doing police work, and that's it. For the rest, this is up to the politicians.
Haitian investigators and the FBI have left the scene outside the president's mansion largely untouched. Not a single member of the president's guard was injured or killed in the attack. Below the president's house, families live in a row of modest homes.
Wait a minute. Did he just say the FBI were there? Let me just repeat that for a second, because then, like, hold on.
Haitian investigators and the FBI have left the scene outside the president's mansion largely untouched. Not a single member of the president's guard was injured or killed in the attack. Below the president's house, families live in a row of modest homes.
After the president's been killed, do you feel safe? In particular, that's had its grip on Port-au-Prince.
G9 is a powerful federation of gangs who rule neighborhoods across the capital. Jimmy Cherizier, aka Barbecue, is their leader. He's reported to have had links with Moise's government, and the president's death is a major blow to his influence in Haiti. He says that's not the case.
En pile moun qui dans la police, en pile moun qui dans pouvoir, en pile moun qui dans opposition, c'est yo qui fait complot avec bourgeois senti pour yo livrer président. Son complot national et international contre peuple haïtien. N'a répété ça encore. peuple a pour dans la rue et n'a pratiqué ça qui relève légitime violence. Et n'a répété encore, nous c'est grand petit monde, yo tiré sur nous, nous compte ça pour nous faire. Merci.
Cherizier.
So that was pretty deep. You heard that, right? So, but the way he's portrayed in the media, he's portrayed like a real villain. So, if you're such a villain, why would you want to go around killing and illing and doing all that stuff with your own people, right? But if you look at Haiti, right, I'm sure they have nicer areas than what you see here, but this is a fact of life. It's not getting better, and it hasn't gotten better.
Is a former cop accused of carrying out neighborhood massacres and overseeing the kidnap for ransom gangs that are terrorizing the city, which he denies. At least for now, he rules several neighborhoods in Port-au-Prince.
Et ça, supposé que charge ça. J'ai pas contrôlé toute la.
Do you see G9 and yourself as a legitimate authority here in Haiti?
Nous connaissons que nous sommes forces politiques, nous sommes structures sociopolitiques, sont structures sociopolitiques cap goumé pour moun qui pi mal yo pour nous comment nous capable.
A social political movement that carries around pretty large weapons and gets into gun battles with other social political movements.
Listen to how this guy's talking, though. This is exactly what I'm saying. Like how, like the way he's just like, you there and up in the nigger's business, right? And like you're talking to the guy who's like literally probably could be the revolutionary for like his country, right? Because of what we know went down. And here you are, nice and easy. I'm not, beefing on him. I'm just trying to show like the hubris of some of the, the folks that maybe run the industry, maybe tell their employees, say, make sure you sound like a real, like over the top, like you're better than them type of vibe. Make him sound like a child, right? And you got big guns. Where the fuck did you think he got those guns from? It's not like, I don't know, there's a Haitian company, a Haitian industrial military complex, an African military complex. So this is why, right, the way he's just speaking to him. So you project that, hey, now we know that he's probably the bad guy. Look, let's just back it up and we'll continue. Bust this.
Large weapons and gets into gun battles with other social political movements.
Même comme leader responsable, nous prenons des dispositions pour nous protéger la population la caille nous.
But Cherizier's influence extends well beyond his neighborhoods.
Bah bon bien. Ah bon bien c'est vraiment comme yo.
Since the assassination, he's threatened an all-out insurrection against Haiti's political class.
M'a goumé contre un système qui senti, m'a goumé contre un système qui corrompu. M'a goumé contre moun qui pi riche yo mené pays à côté lié jodi à là. Moun sa pas jamais senti insécurité a. Jodi a li pour insécurité arriver sur moun sa yo. Moun sa pas jamais senti sacré ou dormi la caillou. Bal ap tirer. Jodi a li pour bal tirer contre moun sa yo et tout.
So you could see, it looks like he's keeping it real. And I'm sure the same pressure is everywhere if you're a cop. And once again, this goes out to the men in blue and the men who go out there. And I understand some countries it's light blue, some countries it's black, some countries it's white shirts, right? But I'm sure it's really tough trying to do the right thing, working for a system that might not be as perfect, right, or altruist as we would expect it should be, because now everything's kind of infiltrated. So him being, I'm sure, like if you look at a little history about Haiti, especially back in the Clinton years, back in the 90s, when a lot of you who are alive today weren't alive, you would see the number that was done onto that place. But that's not just Haiti, it's everywhere else, right? It's everywhere else in the world, whether it be like all across the continent of Africa, right? or whether it be, in Haiti, and even other countries that are considered as so per se Afrocentric, right next door to Haiti, right? Dominican Republic. They got a serious colorism thing out there too, right? It's like day and night. One place looks well off, better for touristic activities and so much more on the lighter side than the other, like day and night. But once again, we're here to see why that is, and can it last forever? Right? How did it get to this? We're going to take a little look in the history. So once again, thank you for joining the date. Shout out to all the wonderful, lovely people out there who are here to see and make sense of what time it is right now. I'm also on other platforms. One of the better platforms I'd say today. Check out Odyssey, where you can actually see a lot more of the factual news out there, right? You got different interests and whatnot, but hey, the truth is coming out. Anything that you couldn't see on all the older platforms like the Tube and all of them. I mean, I would put some stuff out there, but I'm having way much more fun with my family here on Odyssey and Getter and also BitChute. That's wicked. That too. These are the sites that people say, "Oh, right wing people are there." Oh, that. You know what? I'd rather chill out and hang with the right wing people who can tell me straight up what the deal is, right? And go with like what the brain is meant to do, which is think, than just go for the as we say, the popular influencer of the time. Now, not everyone's perfect, yes, and you're gonna have some assholes like anywhere else, but you know what? When you're trying to be so altruist and so perfect and left and open doors minded on one extreme, that's not helping anybody, but probably damaging more people, well then I don't want to be a part of that. So that's my take. Maybe I'll share this, but you know what? Hey, it depends how they feel about it. And I'm not going to be. I'm from a Gen X, right? Bro, Gen X. We don't put up with shit. You down with me or you're not. Whoever you are, like if you're going to be an asshole, be an asshole. I know that when we leave this world, right, everything comes back. You live that shit. So yeah, I'm not perfect, but you know what? I could do something than just sit back and watch this world go to shit, right? So thank you for tuning in. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to get my ass kissed here. And 1,000 likes and 1,000,000 friends. Yeah, fuck. There's no money to make in this shit. Get real, right? Unless you're like with the corporate, which is now the bigger tubes and all of that. Anyway, you can also catch the Internet Archive. That's where I'm at. I highly recommend you just even go there, upload your shit. You have a right to protect your shit. Upload your shit on such a good platform where it's more friendly to about education, right? And about like just basically finding out the truth in the world, right? Internet Archive, nonprofit. Now, like anything, it's never perfect, but yeah, you've got like what? Look at that. 625 billion web pages, 38 million books. Hey, and so much more, right? So, and a lot of it, what I like about it, it's very grassroots also. It's still at this point, right? But it's definitely one of the better sites to check out. Check it out, all right? So let's go back here. So as to continue with the topic. So this picture of this woman was taken by an artist, and one of the things I also want to mention is like with war, there's always a camera that's there for a minute. That's always there to get that picture, right? And it makes you kind of wonder, well, gee, how do these photographers do it to take pictures of all these bodies that are all mangled up and bloodied and do this. So, I guess you have to look at the collection. But Don McEwen is the guy who got this picture. However, I guess as you know, brilliant as you could say or not, it shows a reality, and I guess we need people like that to do that. So this guy has often taken more of an interest in the victims of the conflict than the perpetrators. This is evident in his coverage of the Biafran War, where in 3 years of war, more than 1 million people died. You hear that number, right? That's a lot of people. Food supplies were restricted to the Biafran region, causing widespread famine and disease. on assignment for the Sunday Times magazine. McCullen, if I'm pronouncing it right, photographed starving war orphan children, and this photograph is a harrowing portrait of a starving mother attempting to breastfeed her child with shriveled breast. She's dignified, looking the viewer straight in the eye, and the composition not only gives the subject a voice, but also intends to give the viewer a conscious obligation igniting action. So this is how they write this stuff up, right? And it's like, she's probably thinking, you mother damn, you ding dang, yeah, dignity. You're like naked, half naked there with your shriveled breasts, trying to, feed whatever's in there to your child because there's a war going on. Wow, I never seen that in, even that kind of look. What is that? Contemporary 1968. So imagine, if you will, if that was the case, if it's 1968, what do you think was going on in the 40s? I'm just saying, was it that bad? Was it that bad? Even the sirens are out. Was it that bad? I don't know. But these are just food for thoughts, right? And there are other types of photography, but this is what we do see as part of life, especially when it comes to like war and whatnot. Somebody's always able to capture that, whether it's a bomb or not. So yeah, so this is the artist that made that happen. And there's other photographers in the world that create their art around what we call the victims of such as dramatic wars and whatnot. I just thought we'd take a little look at some of the, so he's a British journalist, and he's a sir. And he's still in the house. Began in 1959. Happy birthday, belated, October 9th, 1935. So he's 87, right? So well known. And he was able to get a lot of this stuff. So, as the war photographer. But I'm always, like I say, the war photographer, you got to have maybe guts of steel if you're going to go and check this shit out, right? If you're going to be able to um, do such as take these photos. I'm not going to really look up for much. Just going to check out a few, right? So yeah, so war photos, right? So the camera always gets something. And of course, there is such a, I guess we could say, an art to it. Because it's all about, once again, life and death in many cases. So this is one of the gentlemen who would do these images as such. And there are other war photographers out there, right? Look at this, it's pretty classic. The only reason why I want to show this is that it says something, right? Even this gentleman doesn't look as aged or haggard as. But like I say, have discernment. Have discernment. Like, look at this. Oh, no connection. Let's see. Trying to. Oh, I guess we're not going to get this one. Ah, there we are. Look at this. I mean, even in that moment of tension, if you even examine, like I said, not discounting or saying, it's not real or any like a conspiracy. I'm just saying, have discernment as to everything, feeling shock, all of this stuff. So yeah, there's another one. Something bad was happening here. Turkish woman with son learning the death of her husband killed by Greek militia. Well, obviously that'd be distressing. Peace is more elusive. It is invisible and abstracts you. Okay, let me try it. Peace is more elusive. It's invisible and abstract, as you said. As for war, it's in your face. You cannot see a dead person and walk around as if it were not there. It's there, it revolts you. Confessions of a War Photographer. So yeah, that'll probably be an interesting. But there is such sites that have war photography um, exhibitions national in the National Gallery, right? And it's something definitely worth if you ever have the gumption to check it out, check out what's going on, and of course more about the whole cruelty of it, right? So once again, thank you very much for tuning in, and welcome to the date. By this time now, we'll probably be going into the next day, the 26th of October. It's after 11 a.m. 2022, now Wednesday. And here are some more National Gallery photos. Shell shocked US Marine, right? And these are once again, more the same, if not the works we just saw earlier, and others. So this is why I'm like, South Vietnam, US Marine inside a civilian house, 1968. What's this? Arresting Catholic youth. There's a bro right here. I'm just saying, right? I mean, it's real. This is like real, but at the same time, like I said, everything has a moment, and to be able to have the eye to capture all these moments, it says a lot. That's all I'm saying, right? But because this is real, these kids are training, right? What future? How? If you follow each person's life, what happens to this child in mid 1970s? What have they grown up to be? All of these people to account for. I'm just like kind of thinking outside the box, right? Because once again, these pictures, as real as they are, you gotta have discernment about the environment of everything that happens and how they capture these fucking, dead bodies just like that. Like you saying, yo, you can't just pass around. And yeah, I can imagine. Uh, Especially in Vietnam. Vietnam must have been so. Like, look at this. Let's check this photo out for a second. I mean, let's really examine this. Like that's somebody, North dead Vietnamese soldier, Battle of Hue. Let's see here. And I don't know no forensics or anything, but that's something also that I've seen old documentaries of bodies like they all look identical going into pits, right? All lengthy, long. It's like, and I've heard it was cancer patients, and I've heard all but they're all bald, and it just makes you kind of want to like in 2023 have discernment because a lot of people are being called out on shit now, right? I was actually just having lunch with a senior. I talked to a lot of the seniors. That's why I try to learn, get my school, and that was a question I asked. I said, because now the question's coming up: how much of the war that you actually go through and live through is like what we really see on the movies, right? Because the movies always shows us, oh, it's big, it's explosive, it's all of this, and you'd be surprised. The answers were like, well, a lot of I mean, if there was some action in real time, it definitely wasn't like a movie. Because one of the things is time kind of stops, right? The bullets flying, yeah, you could have a moment like that, but there's gonna be that moment where you're like, if it stops long enough and the reality kicks in, and you can go on the next day if you haven't shit your pants already, right? From the previous day, which is a reality. Don't think war is not stinky, right? But the overall big picture of the platoons and all that blast out stuff, and you can make a 2 hour movie on it, or you can write an 8 season sitcom like MASH around it, even though the war actually took place like about 3 years. It's food for thought. So yeah, so and once again, don't get me started here, but like you could see, I mean, this world that we live in, like we say, is a stage, inverse, outverse, reverse, upverse, downverse. We all could somehow come from this, right? Whether you come into the world naturally or so, I would say even the percentile might be even now today, what, 65% reversed of what some people would call family or generational curses, right? by intervention of people. But I digress. As we look into the continuing of this post, which is like, yeah, talking about all this war, right? Every time we see bros get together, right? And this is what happened in 68, 1968. The Biafran children were training as soldiers. So we'll look at that in a second. But first, I want to share a little history here about what the Zulus were about, because then now you'd be really talking history. So I present to you Zulus.
Free State and the South African Republic were created. They would survive for nearly 50 years, forming a buffer of sorts between the British and the Zulus, and a crucial alternative enemy for the Cape Colony. However, the problem for the Zulus was that there was an ever-growing discovery of resources in the region, including gold and diamonds, which drew ever larger numbers of settlers to the region, such as the notorious proponent of British imperialism in Africa, Cecil Rhodes. As settlement in the region increased, Mpande's successor, his son Tetswayo, from the very point that he succeeded his father.
Very pretty guy, eh? Standing for that painting, because they actually got that painting, right? That's supposed to be the bro, Cheswao, and they got that painting of him. So he was already there. And the reason why I'm bringing that out is because the bigger picture, as you'll see, how puppet regimes and coups happen. I would say the story of Shaka Zulu and the history of Zulu Kingdom is a very good reference, because at least even then, the Mzungu, the guys who were, the Europeans, were trying to like take over the shit with what we knew now today as even then, it was the access of weaponry, right? They brought in the garrison gun, which was basically, what was the rivet, or what do you call it? I don't know about the guns, but where you put your bullets in, just to rotate a lot faster by a certain number of clicks, and hey, you're good to go. The rounds will go. That was the heads up. And of course, once again, when we talk about the devil and Satan, those guys, the man being able to plan in secret and devise secret wicked plans, right? In night, somebody have to go, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, again, to dream, sleep a plan to create the weapon to wipe out all those people. But here we go. I'll digress on that. But look how pretty he looks. Look at those eyes, right? Somebody actually did that painting then. So how did they get to that? Let's take a look.
Father in 1872 faced growing pressure from the British to the southwest. This would culminate in the Anglo-Zulu War, which erupted in 1879, and which has gained major notoriety in the history of European imperialism in 19th century Africa. The Anglo-Zulu War was fought over 6 months between January 1879 and June of the same year. The war has become very well known to Western audiences owing to the 1964 film Zulu starring Michael Caine, as well as the follow-up film Zulu Dawn, which was released in 1979 and featured Burt Lancaster and Peter O'Toole in the lead roles. It was not unusual for males.
I just want to throw in also, don't forget, I'm also a writer, and I want you to know that there's such a script I wrote called Zulus, The Crown of Thorns. So definitely you want to check that out, because that's one of the, as I would like to say, another continuation of what Zulus was. So this is one good documentary, as I'm going to play a little bit more, but once again, it's to show you what time it was back then, right? We saw that this guy had a very nice picture, right? Really sweet picture, and they made a painting, and hey, all of a sudden now, we can make a movie about the Zulus and the war that they almost won. Let's take a look.
Opponent of British imperialism in Africa, Cecil Rhodes. As settlement in the region increased, Mpande's successor, his son Tetswayo, from the very point that he succeeded his father in 1872, faced growing pressure from the British to the southwest. This would culminate in the Anglo-Zulu War, which erupted in 1879, and which has gained major notoriety in the history of European imperialism in 19th century Africa. The Anglo-Zulu War was fought over 6 months between January 1879 and June of the same year. The war has become very well known to Western audiences owing to the 1964 film Zulu starring Michael Caine, as well as the follow-up film Zulu Dawn, which was released in 1979 and featured Burt Lancaster and Peter O'Toole in the lead roles. But these films have conveyed the idea of a kind of Zulu victory in the war. The first film, showing a small British garrison battling against overwhelming odds when attacked by thousands of Zulu warriors, and Zulu Dawn covering the famous Battle of Isandlwana, one of the most significant defeats inflicted on a British colonial army during the 19th century. The reality of the wider conflict, though, is much different, with a swift 6-month campaign in 1879 resulting in a total British victory and a
total British victory, and of course, an effective destruction of the Zulu kingdom. How did they get that? I'll show you in a second. But the reason why I just froze it right there is that, can you imagine how embarrassing or how terrible it might have been, right, for the European, British, Mzungu to be completely, nearly obliterated by a bunch of guys with chucks and spears, because that's what they was using at the time. The chuck and the spear and the shield, and they beating them. They had those pointy guns then, right? So it was either that, and you know what, you had to take like about a minute or maybe a few good seconds to put in the next bullet. So yeah, those guys were chucking their shit straight into the eyes of those guys. But that would have been a big blow, right? No matter how the theater, as we always call it, the theater of war, right? Somebody's got, even to paint this shit. How did they, once again, I always say, have discernment, camera. You're going to see camera in places where, how the fuck did that, like what? The guy was just that, was it a bro who was actually doing the painting? You never know. You probably have some really excellent sketchographers. Like, how did they get hardcore action? But anyway, I just wanted to show that because it's important that this type of image, no matter how maybe traumatic for some, good for others, it's a picture that says what they say, 1,000 words, right? You can even see from the bottom here, the bro, like, oh my God, help me, he cut my ass here, right? Right. So let's take a look at this brief period and what whacked them out. And this is, all of this to say the connection to this, as I'm explaining here, is that we're seeing this kind of game play out right now in real time, as we see with Haiti, as we see what's going on even in Ukraine, right? It's all about weaponry and the power of weaponry through the gumption of maybe some dumbasses who just like war, and they just were brought up to be that. But that's a whole deeper question on war and peace.
The reality of the wider conflict, though, is much different, with a swift 6-month campaign in 1879 resulting in a total British victory and the...
I like the way they say it, in a swift 6-month campaign, right? A cleanup, per se.
Month campaign in 1879 resulting in a total British victory and the effective destruction of the Zulu kingdom. The war broke out owing to pressure having been applied on King Cetshwayo in 1878 by...
Wait a minute. What's he doing in a suit? Is he got a suit on? And look at this bro coming up. That's probably like a related. He's probably a bro too. Don't forget, they whitewashed and they did what we called passing, right? That's where you had all them American presidents. You know what? Even you, the crackiest cracker out there who's listening to me right now, you got roots in you. So cut that shit out about colorism. That's part of the great Satan of it, right? And how media uses that. But I'll get to you on that. Now, let's watch about your family. Kick back, blow your spliff, have a quick stiff one. Do what you gotta do, but do it in the Lord's name.
Sir Bartle Frere, the High Commissioner of the British Empire in the Cape Colony, by Sir Bartle Frere, proactive destruction of the Zulu kingdom. The war broke out owing to pressure having been applied on King Cetshwayo in 1878 by Sir Bartle Frere, the High Commissioner of the British Empire in the Cape Colony, in an effort to provoke a war with the Zulu kingdom. Frere orchestrated a boundary dispute with the Zulus during 1878 And then, in December, he sent an ultimatum to Cetshwayo. The terms of this were outrageous. Frere, for instance, demanded that the Zulu army be entirely disbanded and that the entire military caste of Zulu society be dispensed with. Christian missionaries were to be given protected status and allowed to preach within Zululand. The most egregious provision, though, concerned the appointment of a British resident as Queen Victoria's representative at the Zulu King's Court. It was clear that this resident would be much more than an ambassador, as the ultimatum also stipulated that he should be present when certain courts were held before Cetshwayo. These terms essentially would have amounted to becoming a vassal of the British government of the Cape Colony, and could not be accepted by Cetshwayo. These reservations aside, he was also anxious to avoid a war and tried to avoid rejecting Frere's ultimatum outright. It was no use though, as Frere's goal had been to provoke a conflict, and when Cetshwayo prevaricated, the British crossed over the border with thousands of troops in January 1879. The British, under Lord Chelmsford, commenced their invasion of Zululand on the 11th of January 1879. It had originally been intended to send approximately 16,000 troops into Zululand in 5 different contingents, but less than 10,000 were eventually mobilized in 3 divisions. Against them, Cetshwayo had roughly 35,000 warriors, but these largely fought with primitive weapons consisting of spears, shields, and some limited use of firearms. Despite their technological inferiority, the Zulus were able to draw first blood and repel the first invasion of Zululand. On the 22nd of January, a force of nearly 20,000 Zulu warriors attacked an isolated column of 1,800 British and colonial troops, encamped near the hill of Isandlwana in the northeast of modern-day South Africa. The British had underestimated the Zulus and failed to set up a defensive perimeter in Isandlwana. Sheer numbers did the rest. The Zulus' lack of military technology compensated for by outnumbering the British 11-1, while the Zulu bullhorn battle formation was used to encircle and surround the British troops. During the final clashes of the engagement, the British ran out of ammunition and the confrontation descended into fierce hand-to-hand fighting, in which the Zulus were at less of a disadvantage militarily. In the end, only a few hundred of the 1,800 British and colonials escaped from the Battle of Isandlwana. Approximately 1,300 lay dead across the battlefield. However, there are no accurate figures for the Zulu dead and wounded, but it is believed that the rough estimations of the time extended into the thousands. The defeat, the largest suffered by a British force against such a poorly armed indigenous army up to that time, was only partly assuaged by the successful repulsion of a force of approximately 3,500 Zulus by 150 British soldiers at Rorke's Drift, a mission station nearby, the following day. The 2 events, the Battle of Isandlwana and the Battle of Rorke's Drift, are the central events of the films Zulu Dawn and Zulu, respectively. The defeat at the Battle of Isandlwana ensured that the first invasion of Zululand could not meet with success, though some of the other detachments continued to operate around the border with Zululand into the spring of 1879. Then, in the early summer, Lord Chelmsford, who knew he was to be revoked from his command shortly, in an effort to save face after the disaster at Isandlwana, led a second invasion into Zululand. This one was eminently more successful, not least because Chelmsford brought a much greater army with him, in excess of 20,000 men. Rapid progress was made, culminating in the Battle of Ulundi on the 4th of July 1879. Here, some 4,000 British and colonial troops squared off against the 13,000 Zulu warriors at the capital of Cetshwayo's kingdom. Here, a disciplined advance by ranks of British gunmen, aided by Gatling guns, rendered the Zulu battle tactics completely ineffective.
So this is the part, if you want to take some notes and get a little history into your brain, right? The Garrison gun and the Gatling guns. That's what was it? Used to blow the bits out of the Zulus. The Gatling guns, right? The Gatling guns rendered the Zulu battle tactics completely ineffective. Let's just repeat that and you can catch the wording.
Ohio's kingdom. Here, a disciplined advance by ranks of British gunmen, aided by.
So that's the 4th of July, 1879. The Battle of Ulundi, 4th of July, where they brought in the Gatling. So whatever other type of arms, I might have been quoted as saying the garrison, but actually the Gatling gun is what they use. And that mother thing was as big as. Let's look up the Gatling gun actually, because you know what? We're here to learn. So thank you for tuning in to the date and also who made the gun, right? So Gatling gun, the Gatling, G-A. Okay, so what we see here, the Gatling gun is a rapid firing multiple barrel. There you go, the barrel firearm, invented in 1861. All right, by Richard Jordan Gatling. It's an early machine gun and forerunner to the electric motor driven rotary cannon. So if you don't know what guns you really are, whatever, how they kind of build up and machine guns, all this is a basic. So I didn't even know that shit has an electric motor in it. And drill motor, rotary gas, the you know that, yeah, going around and around. So the Gatling gun's operation centered on a cyclic multi-barrel design. Cyclic, circling, multi-barrel design which facilitated cooling. See, you have to think. Somebody have to be in bed, going to bed Thursday night, after probably having a good long night out. And let's see, how can we cool that shit? And synchronize the firing reloading sequence. So how can we do that? They wake up, they have breakfast, they brush their teeth, they go to the bathroom, use the toilet. As the hand wheel is cranked, the barrels rotate, and they're thinking about that. And each barrel sequentially loads a single cartridge from a top-mounted magazine. Okay, that's the ammunition storage and feeding device. Somebody had to think of that shit out. Fires off the shot when it reaches a set position, usually at 4 o'clock. Look at that. Then ejects the spent casting out of the left side. Wow, I'm learning something because you see it in the movies. I don't know. I'm sure maybe some of you do. If you out there, especially out there in the West, right? Yeehaw! This configuration eliminated the need for a single reciprocating bolt design. What's this? Wow, eh? So this stuff is very effective. It was hand cranked. So imagine the hand that was cranking this shit. This is before the, as they say, electric motor, right? We're here to learn, folks. We're not going to be soft about it, however mundane it is. So yeah, you could look at the rotary cannon. That's a whole science there, right? We're not even going to go through that. You can check all this shit out. Let's go back to the person who made this. Remember, that's how we do it here, right? You all know the date. So this baby face guy here is the one who's okay. So of course, he's a Virgo like me, motherfucker. Us Virgos, eh? We always like maybe I should be the one running the world. September 12th, 1818, right? February 26th, 1903. Okay, so he was there for a minute in the 18th decade of the 18th, which is what, the 19th century. All right, and then he popped off in the beginning of the industrial age. An American inventor. So inventing shit maybe since 50 something, for the invention of which is considered to be the first successful machine gun. Who's your mama? Who your mama? Let me see your mama. Gatling was born in Hertford County, North Carolina, 1818, and raised a Methodist. At the age of 21, Gatling created a screw propeller for steamboats, okay, without realizing that one had been patented. Oh, that says a lot, eh? So he created a screw propeller for steamboats without realizing that one had been patented just months beforehand by John Erickson. This bro. Hmm. He looks like a bro too, right? Look at that. That's an afro there. But I digress. While living in North Carolina, yeah. At age 36, he moved. Nothing more, eh? Who's his mom? Okay. Successful enough to marriage to Jemima. What? Jemima. That don't sound like no white woman. Jemima, 19 years younger, daughter, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because it is after a while, David Wallace. But it's important. An active member of his Masonic Lodge, okay. He was a member of Center Lodge number 23. Very good to know. I've been hearing a lot about the Masonic people coming up these days. They're on the dice, eh? They're on the sun. Yeah, everybody's kind of on the, they're like, well, do we tell the world that it's inverse, unverse everywhere? And like, yeah, that's what this fight's about, right? And meanwhile, you have those male-centric dudes who might actually not be, with the, yeah, yeah, men, right? It's reverse. Right? So look, while best knowing for inventing the gun, and then right. Patent means biting. Like we used to say, like you probably bite that idea because everything is a kind of universal, real idea. I think what's his name? Tesla said it best. We can share that shit because not everybody knows how to really pull that shit. Maybe there are more people, like in Africa, they're pulling this shit every day, but they always get them sick when they try to pull it out, right? So yeah. So let's see. Scoop level, yeah, wheat drill, hemp brake machine, steam plow, now steam tractor. Invented, you just put the things together, right? Okay, so the gun. After he noticed that a majority of the soldiers fighting in the Civil War, here we are, were lost to disease rather than gunshots. That makes sense. In 1877, he wrote, "It occurred to me that if I can invent a machine gun, which enable one man, let me just make sure I get, which could by its rapidity of fire." Okay, I'm gonna just repeat that. He wrote, "It occurred to me that if I could invent a machine gun which could, by its rapidity of fire, enable one man to do as much battle duty as 100, that it would, to a large extent, supersede the necessity of large armies. Consequently, exposure to battle and disease would be greatly dismissed." So there was always, I won't look into it now, but it's known that, yeah, a lot of disease on the field, as much as, because back then you're living among people, even I'm sure the hygienics was not as great. And once again, what do you think all the war stuff comes from? Like diapers, right? It's all war stuff. They invent that shit and they say literally, and yeah, okay, maybe babies could use this too. And you know what? Maybe in 100 years we'll sell it to seniors. Yeah, it's what it is. So the gun was based on Gatling's seed planter. He's probably a bro. Everybody say bro, bro. Yeah, the gun was based on Gatling seed planter, right? Bro probably yell, yeah, bro, take a look, look, sir, take a look. That's what this works. A working prototype was developed in 1861. I'm sure niggas were making that shit earlier than that. Come on. And then he just like, polished it off maybe. In 1862, he founded, because niggas weren't founding companies like that or easy like that, right? Like robber barons. He founded the Gatling Gun Company. So he already forecasted that to market the gun. So this is business school right here. He founded a company to market the gun, and then the first 6 production guns were destroyed during a fire. Oh, this is interesting. In December 1862, at the factory. Put it in context. Let's time travel now. So 1962, boom. You remember? Okay, here we are now. Let's go back to 1862. Boom. Okay, so the world was what it was in 1862, and they were making guns to blow shit up. Okay, all 6 of them had been manufactured at Gatling's expense, so he had money. Undaunted, Gatling arranged for more, for another 13 to be manufactured. So the 13, eh? Maybe the 6th did. No, No, let's do Magic 13. At the Cincinnati type factory. So factories, you see, the invention of the factory made all this shit possible too, right? The industrial, pre-industrial, as what they coined it after the fact, right? Although the gun was developed during the Civil War, it saw very little action. This is partially because Gatling was accused of being a copperhead. What the fuck is that? In 18, I'm sorry, but it was like, what? A copperhead? Because of that? They're like, we don't trust this nigger? What? Because he is a copperhead? What? A bro? In the 1860s, the copperheads, also known as peace Democrats, were a faction of Democrats in the Union who opposed the American Civil War and wanted an immediate peace settlements with the Confederates. So they called you a copperhead. Hey, that's pretty funny. I'm sorry, I got to laugh. Hey, you're a copperhead. Why? Because you copper pennies, I guess. I don't know. Because of his North Carolina roots, that's where he was from, but it was never proven. So it's not proven that he was a copperhead. He was never affiliated with the Confederate States government or military. So it's kind of like what's going on right now, like with the what is it, Black Rock or whatever they call themselves there, the military bullet industrial people, right? They're not political. They're not political at fucking. They can say, well, we'll put money towards that, right? Just like the pill association, is that called the pill association, right? So he was never affiliated with Confederate States government, nor did he live. This is what happens when you have a screen here. Nor did he live in the South during the Civil War. Okay, so this guy, Benjamin F. Butler, American Major General, lawyer, blah, 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 bought the 12. So he bought the prototype 12. This guy, you with me? Check him out. And Admiral David Dixon Porter was a United States Navy admiral and a member of one of the most distinguished families in the history of the U.S. Navy. Okay? And he bought one. So that's the 13th. And it was not until 1866 that the U.S. government officially purchased Gatling guns. And then he sold it to Colt. So they're saying, okay, it was absorbed. So pretty much, that's the precursor to this. With me? That's the pretty, yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure there's always got to be more to it, but the gist is, this should happen, then yeah. And that it was absorbed by Colt, and they're very well known. That's why I guess I was seeing Garrison and all that stuff, right? Because, yeah, I know they probably like owned all of that stuff also. An electric freaking motor. So, with that being said, right, we got a good idea. I'm just gonna do, you gotta always Garrison. Let's see, such a thing. There we go. No, yeah, right. Gris-Bouval system was an artillery system introduced by Lieutenant General Jean-Baptiste Vaquette. Sounds like a bro. The Gris-Bouval during the system revolutionized French cannons. See, with a new production system that allowed lighter more. So it siege and garrison guns, right? That's what they are like. So I guess it's more associated with what was happening in France, field guns. So all of this to say, this shit was going on for a minute. All of that up until people were talking about the Zulus and the Battle of Ulundi. So let's say the rest of this, right? Some education going on here, because this is the main caveat. This says it right there. That Gatling gun, right? They weren't using certain old things.
Kingdom. Here, a disciplined advance by ranks of British gunmen, aided by Gatling guns, rendered the Zulu battle tactics completely ineffective, and the Zulu warriors eventually fled from the region. In the end, just 10 British soldiers had been killed, while over 500 Zulus lay dead across the battlefield of Ulundi, and 1,000 more were badly wounded, Victory at Ulundi effectively brought the Anglo-Zulu War to an end, and also ended the independence of the Zulu nation, which Shaka had built over half a century earlier. In the aftermath of the war, Cetshwayo was essentially made a puppet king, one who was briefly sent to England for an audience with Queen Victoria. He died.
Stop. Hold on. Did they just say what we just thought we just heard he said? He became a what? A puppet? Let's hear it again, once again, before we move on. Thank you very much for joining the date in this section of Merry Undeading Season Greetings 2022.
Colonial troops squared off against the 13,000 Zulu warriors at the capital of Cetshwayo's kingdom. Here, a disciplined advance by ranks of British gunmen, aided by Gatling guns, rendered the Zulu battle tactics completely ineffective, and the Zulu warriors eventually fled from the region. In the end, just 10 British soldiers had been killed, while over 500 Zulus lay dead across the battlefield of Ulundi, and 1,000 more were badly wounded. Victory at Ulundi effectively brought the Anglo-Zulu War to an end, and also ended the independence of the Zulu nation, which Shaka had built over half a century earlier. In the aftermath of the war, Cetshwayo was essentially made a puppet king, one who was briefly sent to England for an audience with Queen Victoria. He died in 1884, and despite the best efforts of his son and heir, Dinuzulu, to preserve the Zulu kingdom, in part by attempting alliances with the Boer states, Zululand was annexed by the British in 1887. It was the beginnings of a period of rapid centralization and expansion of the British presence in South Africa, which resulted in 2 wars with the Boers between 1880 and 1881, and more consequentially from 1899 to 1902. Following the latter struggle, known as the Second Boer War, the British had become the hegemonic power in the region, approximating to the modern-day state of South Africa. Hence, the kingdom which Shaka had created between 1816 and 1828 lasted for 50 years against British encroachments, but eventually it, like the various Boer states, could not resist the advance of British dominion in southern Africa. How should we evaluate Shaka Zulu in light of the kingdom he created and the fate of the Zulu kingdom after his death? There is perhaps a tendency to view Shaka today as a romantic figure who bravely tried to build up a centralized Zulu kingdom which could withstand the impending onslaught of the European aggressors. But this is to give Shaka far too much credit.
And the reason why I pause it here is because they're not going to give him credit right after this. And of course, this is always the case. Once again, a caveat word, he might be a little too arrogant, and they throw that stuff in because for a minute he kicked everyone's ass, right? And it was like, well, we couldn't waste him, so let's make him, we call it a puppet. Why? Because we've got Gatelins, bro. We could take this guy out in a minute with our Gatelin. Even if we have to, back then, have 20 guys to carry this shit, you can position it. But today, you can just bring 30 guys. Isn't it ironic? Back then, they were like, okay, let's do one guy for one drill, right? But now today, it's what with the Haitian prime minister? How many? Some like what 8, 7? How many guys with machine guns and shit like that to do one? Because for some reason, it makes you wonder, that. Why? What did these guys actually conspire? That's what they mean when the Bible says conspire in secret and dream. Oh, I don't know. I mean, what do you think that is going to be the fate for those people who put that, who dreamt it up and said, I'm going to get this number of guys together because there's a reason why it had to be that many. I'm going to get who's available and two of my own people, right, with some of the other people who don't already like us, put a hit out. So instead of just that one bullet, let's make sure that it's whatever, hundreds. Rip his ass to shreds so he can feel that as that's happening. It says a lot for the people who do that, I'm sure, regardless if he didn't see it coming or not. That shit been going on in Africa and Haiti for years and all of the countries. So times are different now, right? So of course they're gonna say in this end here, before we get ready to move on, they're gonna say, oh yeah, well this nigga still was uppity. Too much credit for this nigga.
There is no denying the brutality of European imperialism in Africa during the 19th century, but this was really only starting at the time of Shaka's rise to power. During the first half of the 19th century, when Shaka reigned, the European presence in sub-Saharan Africa was largely confined to some limited coastal regions like the Cape Colony, the Gold Coast, as well as the port towns along the west coast. It was not until the 1860s and the 1870s that the real scramble for Africa began. As such, while the Zulus and Shaka would have been conscious of the European presence in the form of the British and the Boers to the southwest, and were also increasingly in direct contact with them as traders, they would not have perceived them as an existential threat to their way of life in the 1810s and 1820s. Given this, we might perceive Shaka as a powermonger, one who built up the Zulu kingdom not as a way of resisting the white man, but purely for his own gain. Virtually his entire career was spent making war on his own fellow Bantu people, and while there is little denying his capabilities as a war leader, and while his centralization of the Zulu state in order to make it a more effective war machine was undoubtedly impressive for its time.
Now, here's my thing. Isn't that the same shit that goes on for like those people who are actually even in Western powers today, right? Like they're saying it right here, but purely resisting the white man for his own gain. I don't know. And even if there was infighting in his own people, which is like, well, I guess like any mob or gang or even Mossad, dang, even whoever you want to fucking call them, because it's always about the brotherhood, right? Bunch of boys, maybe a lot of them came into this world not as boys, and thus the testosterone may anyway. Don't get me started, but let's hear it one more time before we move on. This is the date. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Resisting the white man, but purely for his own gain. Virtually his entire career was spent making war on his own fellow Bantu people, and while there is little denying his capabilities as a war leader, and while his centralization of the Zulu state in order to make it a more effective war machine was undoubtedly impressive for its time, the simple fact is that Shaka killed tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of individuals in order to further his desire for power.
All right, so with that being said, thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to take a quick look at, this was Zulus, and of course, once again, the phenomenon of child soldiers and why that actually exists, the coercion and intimidation of child soldiers to participate in violence. And of course, this phenomenon goes back to the history we've seen, right? So this is one article here that speaks to that, where we say, okay, so, and of course, you can find this on Focus on Africa News and Analysis. This is an article that came out in February, and it's a phenomenon. This guy almost looks pretty much like the young kids that we saw in the previous video, right? They resemble the kids of that era who were, uh, how we shall say, training, right? There they are once again, right? So it's been a minute. This has been going on. It's been a minute. Yeah, what they call it? The theater of war. The theater of war. Hut 234. Hut 234. And then this is way back when the 50s, right? Is that him today? I don't know. You tell me. So this is all about. This is what's going on in Bifran, and this is like those kids training for what's is pretty much the future today. Now, of course, that war has been over for quite some minutes, but the history of it, as we're seeing, and we've heard even going back with the Zulus, and we see now happening in Haiti, right? Wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the fact that these kids can actually have, how we say, the weapons to do such things, or the education, or the grooming to learn about what they could become much later, you know, like what, 50, 60 years later. And of course, what can spawn from that. Look at this guy. Look at those red eyes. Look at him. Woohoo! You know, but still, they're the bros, right? Because we can always say, oh, well, they look dirty and they look this and they look that. They never had a chance. Look, this is what they have. That doesn't look like it's made there. Does Haiti have a fucking weapon factory? No. The phenomenon of child soldiers, according to the definition adopted in 1997, the devil year right there, at the conference organized by UNICEF, right? Ding, ding, ding. They always have the photos of the starving child with a flag on the face. At Cape Town on the prevention, demobilization, and social reintegration of child soldier. A child soldier is any person, male or female, under 18 years of age belonging to a regular army or any armed group, enrolled voluntarily or by force. All right. So, moreover, the term child soldier does not refer to those who use arms but also work as cooks, delivery people, messengers, spies, sex slaves, or those forced into marriage. Child soldiers are an integral part of governmental armies, paramilitary groups, irregular armed factions, as well as groups of rebels and terrorists. Their median age is estimated to be under 13 years. Africa is the most involved continent of the child soldiers phenomenon, with more than 100,000 minors that are being used in wars between different states. Oh, however, the enrollment of minors involves also Western industrialized countries. So, I don't read all of it, but I'm sure this is something if you really want to, do some inquiry as to why this is. And this is not just a black white phenomenon. Let's throw that out the window for a minute, because there's something more deeper seated than just color, obviously, because it's so systematic and it's also infiltrated among the people. But the fact that, once again, this has been around for over hundreds of years. I also like to use that whole point that, we hear about the Spartans. Well, it's known, they had young boys in the Spartans, right? Okay, I'll just leave that there, and then you guys could roll with that. Go look up Spartan and all of that. So this, at least from the beginning of time, even when you go back in Cain and Abel and the whole, even after the floods, it's all about, protection, right? However, from the end of the 20th century, wars are fed by the logic of profit. I like that. That's a sincere quote right there. However, from the end of the 20th century, wars are fed by the logic of profit, and consequently are not characterized as fights between states, but they see themselves opposed. More regular armies, numerous oppositional forces, factions, paramilitary groups, bands of rebel that fight for the conquest and control of the territory in order to exploit resources in an intensive way. Right? They are defined as wars for resources. Victory is not important in these conflicts, but rather the purpose of carrying out profitable crimes. Right? Yeah. In Africa, the exploitment of oil, gold, diamonds, rare minerals, and fine wood produces bloodshed. Third generation colonialism. Right? Major economic and financial forces. So if you read that, yeah, it's pretty much. And here's the another dropped pin. Right? You got a pin. Remember a pin? I hardly see pins these days. Nobody uses pins no more. I guess maybe for magic, maybe in Haiti, in a doll or voodoo doll. But you drop that pin, you try to find it. You have to make sure if you don't want to get juked by that needle or that pin, you might have to get down on your knees, right, in order to find it. God forbid if you dropped it in a carpet. I mean, heck, I don't know what kind of analogy that was, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. But yeah, so a permanent state war. The new nature of war conflicts has given birth to a permanent state. So I would say there's no World War III. In fact, we're probably what up to World War IX, because if you consider like, hey, the bomb was big, but they were still doing shit after with Korea. I would call that the Cuban Missile Crisis, even if it was a close call it what it was. They still launched nukes all throughout that thing. So that could have been easily War 4, Vietnam 5, right? By the time we got to like Kuwait, it would have been at least 7, 8, 9 because of all the other little pools like in what do you call it, Grenada and Haiti, right? So now we're probably like what? Hey, if we're like 9, be careful because it's all about those numbers, right? And then of course Afghanistan. Wait, that was from there. What? That was those. Don't we realize that Afghanistan and Kuwait, like 9/11, that shit went on for 20 years, man. Up until last year when actually the, the last American president said, "Come home and cut this shit off. Just come home." And now it's something anyway. So children are precious prey for recruiters, for armed bands. They are quick, easy, and low cost to enrich their own ranks, right? Because they're immature. You give them ranks. Yeah, in economic terms, the use of children lowers the access barriers to the conflict. Moreover, due to their physical and emotional immaturity, children are also easily controlled and above all conditionable. Through fear, they are forced who obey blindly and commit the most heinous crimes. So, I'd say that's pretty wild, right? Because it tells you right up, straight up off the bat. And this is, once again, this is not a new phenomenon. There's a lot of old sins, right? That from the beginning of time, but at some point it's got to come to roots. It's almost like biblical. Look at this. The problem of child soldiers was faced for the first time in 1977 with the additional protocols to the Geneva Convention of 1949. So you guys might want to look that up. We're not going to do that today, right? However, it's always interesting. We always have more rights and more, instead of just saying like we could really just stop the shit, right? Stop the use of child soldiers. The use of children in armed conflicts is unfortunately not in decline. So it is what it is, right? Because then that's another way of doing genocide on a maybe even on a down low, right? And so we see this, and I'd say this was a very good article to look into. But let's also check out the facts. So Biafra, right? Biafra, make sure I have the right size here. Biafra, officially the Republic of Biafra, was partially recognized successionist state, right? In West Africa that declared independence from Nigeria and existed from 1967 until 70. So, yeah, we're not going to go through all of that in general because early modern maps from 15th to 19th century, drawn accounts, travelers, yeah, explorers, travelers, here you go, right? So, events leading to war in 1960, Nigeria became independent of the United Kingdom. That was Pan Africanism with new states. So, long story short, let's just say being independent, especially whether it be under the Queen or whatnot, for a lot of folks was a shakeup because it was like going back to maybe, per se, the original customs of what the people were, with a modern twist even, but maybe not with enough history and maybe even maturity of its own government. And I believe this is the problem we see a lot with a lot of the like in Africa and Haiti, right? It's like who can run the power, maybe even better than anybody else, but when they don't have, let's say, the not even economic, but when they don't have the right, maybe offensive or right to protect. Like imagine if there was an iron dome everywhere around the planet, right? You got a fucking iron dome in Africa. That'd be pretty funny, right? Imagine if Africa was a superpower to be contended with on nuclear power. Ooh, that would be pretty juicy on newspaper story. So the start of the Nigerian Civil War, of course, culminated in the 1966 anti-Igbo program. Aren't they the Jews? The Igbo? Aren't they the first peoples here? It was a series of massacres committed against the Igbo people and other people of southern Nigerian origin. Who? Why? I'm not gonna go there. You can. That's for yourself for the research. But it was all recognized by Haiti. All of this stuff. No victor, no vanquish. All right. So by Fran forces, they had a force, but then they surrendered to the Nigerian federal military government. Okay, so that they held forces held power in Nigeria from 1966 to 1999, with an internum from 1979 to 83. So since then, let's just take a look here. The child soldiers in Africa refers to the military use of children, right? So as of 2017, the UN listed that 7 out of 14 countries recruiting and using child soldiers in state forces or armed groups were in Africa. Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mali, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan. So these are all their estimates, manipulation tactics, but I'm sure none of these niggas out there learned that just like they were born into that. Or, and if they were groomed into it by a different family, we saw earlier how far it goes, right? With Shaka Zulu. You dig? Look, movement to end child soldiers, red hat. Like, how is this even a fucking movement? I mean, in the sense of how is it that the child soldiers exist to be such a movement that, look, they create laws, the issues, instances. You have all the fucking examples of the planet Earth to tell you. World War II is another example. Look, children frequently fought in both Allied and Axis forces. Of course, we're going to look at that in a second when we come into the next part of our post, right? But for some reason, Africa, with all of this shit, how is it they just don't say, let's get together and maybe, I don't know, call it a day and fucking kick, you know, kick the Mzungu out who's taking advantage of but no. Look, child soldier, I've been remembering about this shit. All those niggas out there in the crack, oh, look, they say commanders force children to take, yeah, they probably have a different uh, method, but probably not more freaking different than what happens maybe in Western culture, right? Except we call it military and but look at all the stuff you're hearing about the abuse, right? There's apparently a lot of abuses going on, right? So even then, we can't just say, you know, uh, blame it on one thing or the other. As victims, it's argued that children, as we're looking back here in the article, are not culpable and thus should not be persecuted because of their immaturity. That too is yes, true, but it's also about the type of education, and I guess once again, the grooming. If you're born in sin, how are you going to get out of that? How are you going to just drop that? That's where I guess it becomes a heavier, holier situation. But going on to the next part, we're going to take a look at another source about how the Mzungu works, right? How the Hitler Youth turned a generation of kids into Nazis, right? Hitler's war against the Boy Scout fueled the Third Reich ideology and its military might. So this is something that, like we never talk about that. In fact, that's probably a lot of the same shit that's going on today, right? Right? But hey, it's okay. It's okay for them, but not for anyone else, right? Because that you would say, almost today they'd say, well, this was the wrong thing to do at the wrong time. But you know what? A lot of those people were never persecuted. This is a fact, right? We know that. We see it. So this goes into saying Boy Scouts motto. So they had a Boy Scouts be prepared, but nothing could prepare Max Ebel, a German teenager, for what happened after Hitler banned the Boy Scouts. As other boys cheered, the 70-year-old was surrounded by a gang of Nazi youth, one who had a knife. One of whom had a knife. Ebel's refusal to leave scouting behind had just turned into a fight for his life. Yeah. So, verbotenless. I'm sure there was, like, for what it was, at least even in that period, you probably had some bros out there. But this is one, this is an article here that talks about, and this is history.com, the Germans whose lives were changed by Hitler Youth. And look at that. Okay? And then you could say, oh, well, it looks more cooler than the black boys we saw earlier. Nah, it's the same shit. Only difference is you just want to hear the story you want, the way you want to hear it, right? Look at that. This is what isn't that movie that just came out, JoJo something? No, is it JoJo right? Some shit like that about the kid. And back then they took it like that, right? Look at that. By the time Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, hundreds of thousands of kids were members of youth organizations like the Boy Scouts, which was invented in England. Well, we hear how that's going. But there was also another powerful youth movement afloat, one invented by the Nazis. They're doing that right now, you know. Since 1922, National Socialists had a youth arm designed to train and recruit members for its paramilitary. Yeah, their youth armed group. So a lot of those youth, like some people would even say, like weef people, the people who run that shit, without even throwing out names, right? But you know, one of them, Harry, whatever his name, the transhumanist guy, right? That speaks on behalf of Uncle Klaus, right? I often think, you know, movies are like real life. You know, like I would say, you know, if you ever seen The Omen, you know, just throwing a joke out there, he could probably be based on uh, Bolsonaro, you know, or even the boys in Brazil, probably based on him too, or Klaus Schwab, right? Uncle Klaus. Probably Jojo Rabbit is based on Uncle Klaus. It was around the same time. He got glasses, right? It's kind of like a Christmas story. Anyway, I digress. So in 1933, there were 50,000 members of the Hitler Youth. So this is 1933. So they had kids, grandkids, and here they are today, right? By the end of the year, with more than 2 million. That's a lot. That's not just like a few bros running in the jungle with, what do you call, wooden guns, right? So the first gangs, if anything, you could say was this, right? They banned children's groups. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just have to go through this. I mean, you're looking at it from what that is history. I'm sure it must have been traumatic, pretty much like what you're seeing happening now with this whole Russia-Ukraine instance, right? Whether you want to know the facts or not. Banning Boy Scouting. Okay, so they were saying when this happened, these kids started to get in the house. Look at that. It's like a Kiss, the band Kiss, you know, KISS, right? It's like the S of that. So look, you telling me they don't have this shit today, right? The group had other benefits. For the Nazis, the group had other benefits. Not only did it allow the Third Reich to indoctrinate children, because it's always about indoctrinating at their most impressionable, but it let the Nazis remove them from the influence of their parents. Isn't that familiar? Some of whom opposed the regime. You never hear about that too. The Nazi Party knew that families, private, cohesive groups, not usually under political sway, were an obstacle to their goals. Hmm. Okay, so essentially, it's just like what they do or what they did back in the day, right? Alphonse Heck's experience was typical, as he told the Boston Globe. In the 1980s, he couldn't wait to become a full-fledged Hitler Youth member and relished marching, singing, and attending rallies. I belonged to Adolf Hitler, body and soul, he recalled. It took him years to step away from that indoctrination after the end of World War II. Look at that. And his crew, huh? Look at that. And I'm sure some of them were not all like, once again, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm sure they, God knows, right? It's like go along, get along, go along, get along. And this was also programming that came from, we now know, from the U.S., right? Have you driven a Ford lately? So some boys refused to join. Of course, what they probably did them attack Hitler Youth, yeah. So this is kind of what it was, right? But this goes back in 43, 45. Younger boys out of school. How does this end? It ends right there. But obviously, here's a fast forward story. A lot of these kids probably got the hell out of there after 1945, became Americans, probably worked in very prestigious companies. Could be like the whole team from NASA right there. It's true. Operation Paperclip, right? And here they are today, and some of them are like they gave up on the shit. A lot of them are probably no longer part of this world, but their grandkids are, and there's money to get from that, like what they call old money, and or yeah, they want to go out with a bang. So there you go, right? Yeah, sign up for the history newsletter as it pops up there. But the history is there, right? So when we go back and we talk about our OGs here, and you can look like these guys look really like what they look scarier than what you just saw. Yeah, I guess so. But it doesn't really. I mean, what does it? Does it make you freak out more? There's some articles you can actually read if you want more. Coercion and intimidation of child soldiers to participate in violence, right? But once again, always about the black people, Angola, Burma, Colombia, Liberia, blah, 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 blah. I have to say blah, 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 because, look, it's a moot point if you even want to say it's a talking point, right? We know they're children. They don't fucking have sense. They can't, say anything. Well, how does that happen? Well, because maybe a lot of children are born or adopted or put into wedlock, right? So this is what we see here with coercion and intimidation of child soldiers. So this is an article that's out there, and you can see Angola, Burma, Colombia, Liberia, Naples, Sierra Leone, right? Introduction, reports, and it's like, okay, we got your freaking look, every country. Except for now, we don't see it in the United States or in Canada, but you know what? It's just a piece of paper that's maybe keeping that, right? Like, look, they're using, aren't they even using like some of these guys in the news we heard, like, uh, even ISIS is breaking out, like, whatever, next generation, and saying like they're fighting in this whole Ukraine thing, and it's like, so as we'll be looking into that, we'll see how not just once again looking at the bros who are doing this shit, right? But we're gonna also look at the Mazungu. Yeah, we call it. Some people call it the white man. Not every white man, but you know who it is. You probably today we even have like guys that look like him who are probably more white power. I'm telling you, right? But even before we go there, we're gonna take a look at a few other points in this article. One of them is watch how Hitler Youth turned a generation of kids into Nazis. So we just saw that, and this is a bit of the example of the vibes they had back then. Thank you for joining the day.